All right, we begin here. The man convicted of the rape and murder of 8-year-old Tazne van Wyk has been sentenced to 9 life terms in prison in the High Court in Cape Town. Muhyiddin Pangaker was found guilty on 21 out of the 27 charges that he faced. Tazne's rape and murder were among the charges. The child was kidnapped from her home in Elsie's River. In February 2020, her body was found more than a week later in a storm water drain along the N1 highway near Worcester. All right, Willem Els is Senior Training Coordinator on Terrorism and Explosives at the Institute for Security Studies, and he joins us now. A very good afternoon to you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us here on SABC News.
Good afternoon, Flo.
Let's start with the conviction that we saw there and the sentence that we saw of the murderer and rapist of 8-year-old Tazne van Wyk, receiving 9 life sentences there. It's positive news. Won't bring back the child, unfortunately. But do you believe that, these sort of sentences do indeed serve as a deterrent to other would-be murderers, child abusers, criminals, etc.?
Flo, yeah, thank you for asking that, because I think that is exactly what South Africa needs at this stage. We need to commend the investigation team of the police as well as the prosecution authority for this positive outcome, because at the end of the day, that is not something that happens every day. It's getting fewer and fewer. And this is something that we really need to commend them on. And we believe that that is exactly what will serve as a wonderful deterrence for the would-be criminals that would like to perpetrate acts like these and other acts.
Yeah. And I mean, from your observation, would you say that South Africa is becoming an even more violent country to live in? I always ask the question if it's, are these crimes being shown more? Are we being more exposed? We've got social media and so forth. So we're able to kind of see in real time these crimes as they happen. Or is it a case that really we are experiencing, extremely high levels of crime?
Flo, yes, it is both ways. On the one hand, it's what we perceive. It's all about perception, what we as a community experience. But on the other hand, we have to be guided by statistics as well.
Yeah.
So if I can just mention a few statistics here. If we look from 2012 to 2022, we saw a 62% increase in the murder rate in South Africa. Now, that is tremendous. But on the other hand, what is really worrying is that we, in the same period, we saw a 55% deterioration in the detection rate. So that means that 62% rise, but of that 55% less people have been arrested and brought to book for this. So that creates the assumption that crime does pay for these criminals. And one of your major deterrences is the prosecution and to face the wrath of the law once you have committed a crime. And that seems to be lacking more and more, driving South Africa more and more into a failed state situation when it comes to law and order, unfortunately so.
Are you finding that, we're not concentrating on what, the main, root cause, what's contributing to this violence, this increase in violence that we're seeing? And perhaps maybe you can tell us, what could be those factors that, are causing us to see this increase in violent crimes?
So yes, when it comes to this, you have to be guided also by statistics and research. And if we look at from 1994, we saw that serious management challenges have been faced by the police, where every commissioner that has been appointed, national commissioner, has either been arrested or left under a cloud. So there's a very big gap in terms of management. And we would like to suggest that in the light of what's happening now, we have to overhaul the current political as well as operational leadership of the police, because we are really missing the point. We are missing our targets. I mentioned the deterioration in the detection rate, also the rise in crime. But, that is against the backdrop of a 72% budget increase from 2012 to 2022. to more than 100 billion. That is the single biggest expenditure by any State Department. But still, we are not reaching our objectives. We are not curbing the crime wave, and we are really being sort of delivered to these organized crime syndicates that are having a free go at our society at the moment.
I mean, it does seem as though, the ordinary South African is really just a sitting duck. I mean, there's also what we've been seeing, what has been shocking really in these days is these, I'd say, steady rise in mass shootings. And maybe I can bring in the issue of gun violence in the country. What is your view there? We're always hearing that we have the best legislation when it comes to gun laws. We don't have the same situation as what we see in the US. However, we're still battling with this issue of gun violence in the country.
That's a good point that you are mentioning. Especially your violent crimes normally in South Africa is accommodated or accompanied by firearms, and then in these cases illegal firearms mostly. We have to look at between 2002 and 2019, we saw that the police, and now I'm not lambasting the police, we are just naming facts because we have to identify the problems. There are many good policemen and officers that are really, putting their lives on the line. But they lost 26,000 firearms over this period. And those are just the firearms that are now in circulation with the criminals, but also then we see police corruption that is increased tremendously, where virtually with every organized crime syndicate that has been arrested, there's one or two policemen involved using their police resources also to commit these crimes. So if you look at your legislation, are we not targeting the wrong target? You're targeting your law-abiding citizens that have to adhere to all your legislation in terms of the licensing of firearms. But at the end of the day, there's a much bigger picture that we have to look at. And that is why I say that we have to overall, our political and operational leadership, to come up with fresh and new strategies in order to combat that, because the current leadership is most definitely not living up to the expectations by the public. The public has got a right to be protected. They have the right to feel safe, because that is what distinguishes a fully functional state and a failed state, where your state can secure your public and provide security to your police. That's one of the pillars of a good and a sound state, and that is really slipping away from South Africa. If you look at the statistic, if you look at the crime rates, and if you look at the perception of the public that they feel unsafe, as you rightly mentioned.
And now I'm being told to wrap up at this time with the conversation, but this is an important one, Mr. Els. More and more, and I mean, as you're talking about the public and you're talking about law-abiding citizens, more and more I'm hearing people saying that it's time that law-abiding citizens arm in order to protect themselves against, what they're being faced with. What do you make of this? Are we really getting ourselves to a point where we could find ourselves in really a lawless country? And one could argue that we're already there, but isn't it concerning that, citizens, the public in general, are actually thinking the only way that they can fight this is if they themselves arm themselves?
That's an indication of the desperation faced by the public. There are arguments for this, and there are arguments against the arming of that, and we can discuss that over a lengthy period. You will see some countries where you don't have any firearms. You also have violence. They resort to violence. They resort to for instance, knives and other weapons that they use. So it's not a question of what the type of weapon is that is being used. It's the availability of the type of weapon, but also it is the culture in that country that we need to address, because South Africa really became an extremely violent country. If you look at in terms of the criminality index in Africa, we are ranking at number 5. We are mentioned in the same breath as countries like Libya and Somalia that are completely failed states, and that is really unacceptable. We have to address that.
All right, Mr. Els, always insightful. Thank you very much for giving us your time here on SABC News. We appreciate it.